Shalom, this is Yair Davidiy speaking from the land of Israel. Today we are about to discuss Ivanka Trump. That is Ivanka Trum Kushner. She's married to Jared Kushner. Is she Jewish? Does she have a right to the land of Israel? And this is a question that has been asked, and we shall discuss it, and we shall discuss other questions related to it, and everything that is involved with it, also concerning the Jewish people and their right to the land of Israel, the right of converts to share in this promise to the land of Israel, and also the right of the 10 tribes to the land of Israel, and the obligation to keep the Torah, to keep the mitzvot and the commandments, and everything involved with it. We shall touch on all these subjects briefly, but it will be of interest and of importance. Who is Ivanka? Who is Ivanka Trump? Ivanka Trum Kushner was born in 1981. She's the wife of Jared Kushner. Jared Kushner is a businessman, a politician, a political advisor, and a statesman and president. And he is the husband of Ivanka. Ivanka is the daughter of President Donald Trump. Donald Trump begat Ivanka from his wife, Ivanka Trump. Ivanka Trump comes from Czechoslovakia. She is half Czech and half Austrian. Donald Trump is an American. His father was from Germany, and his mother was from Scotland, from the Hebrides. From the Hebridean Islands. We have sources showing that the ancient Hebrides was once a people dwelling there who kept Judaism, or were reputed to keep the faith of Judaism, according to people who visited the area. At all events, these areas of Germany, of Austria, are areas in which the 10 tribes neighbored or sojourned in before they moved westward. We identified the lost 10 tribes, so there's people descend from the tribes of Israel. There were 12 tribes of Israel. These 12 tribes separated into 2 different sections. The northern section was taken away by the Assyrians and lost consciousness of its ancestry. We have traced them through biblical, rabbinical, and secular sources. We have traced them to peoples who moved by 2 different pathways to the west. One pathway was to the north through the Caucasus Mountains, and then eastward and westward, first eastward and then westward, and reaching Western Europe. Another pathway was through the Mediterranean Sea into Spain and the area to the north of Spain. Those who were in Spain moved out and moved northwards into Gaul, that is France, and also across the seas to the British Isles. Or they moved directly from Spain to Ireland and into Britain. At all events, they all converged in the same areas. Areas in which we find the lost tribes now, that is where the groups that belong to the lost tribes are now to be identified and found, include the areas of Finland, include Sweden, Norway, Denmark, the Netherlands, Belgium, France, Switzerland, the British Isles, that is England, Scotland, or Wales, Ireland, Northern Ireland, and the offshoots from these areas in North America, that is Canada and the USA, also Australia and New Zealand, and related areas. That is where the lost 10 tribes are. That is where we identify them as being in specific groups who are identifiable. I don't say that everyone in these areas belongs to the lost 10 tribes, but that is when the lost 10 tribes have congregated, and that's where they are to be identified. What proportion is another story, but that is where they are. That is the most important point, and that's a point that we endeavour to impress upon people and to spread the message concerning. So this is what we have. And not only were the Israelites in these areas, but before they got to these areas, in many cases, they sojourned in other areas on the way. Some of them, portions of them, for several centuries, were in the areas of Germany and other parts of Europe. And then they moved on westward, and when they moved westward, there were portions of them who stayed behind, and these ladies moved out and reattached themselves to these little nations. For instance, we have shown that those people from Germany, the 1700s and 1800s, moved en masse into the North America, where in many cases Israelites separating themselves out from the Germanic neighbours who are not Israelites, but are rather other peoples. And this happened all over Europe. The peoples who belonged to Israel separated themselves out from their neighbours and moved and they migrated. And this happens in migrations all over the world. This is a known, observable, and measured phenomenon. And this is what happened. So it could be that the ancestors of Ivanka Trump, were Israelites, or that they were Jewish. We have also discussed the case of Donald Trump. It could be that part of his descendants were part of his ancestors of Donald Trump were also Jewish. And then we leave it as it is. The bottom line is that Ivanka converted to Judaism. She converted to Judaism, but her ancestors may have been of Israelite ancestry. It says in Amos 9, verse 9, for surely I will command, will shift the house of Israel among all nations as grain is shifted in the sea, yet not the smallest grain shall fall to the ground. Ivanka Trum Kushner, she is a well-known personality in her own right. She is a close friend of Chelsea Clinton. She's a former model, a former businesswoman. She is involved in politics and statesmanship and philanthropy. Due to her looks, her personality, the relationship to her father, the activities, and numerous well-publicized media interviews, she has become quite well known to the general public. Ivanka converted to Orthodox Judaism in July 2009. In October 2009, she married Jared Kushner. As of now, October 2017, the couple have 3 children, 2 boys and a girl. So the question has been asked, does she have a right to the land of Israel? This question has many aspects to it. It may be an innocent question out of genuine curiosity, or it may have an agenda behind it. There are those who claim that the Jews, all of the Jewish people, or most of the Jewish people are descended from converts and have no rights to the ancestral land concerning their ancestry. But they were interlopers, strangers who have come out of Europe, and they should go back to Europe. That is what they are saying. These Palestinian advocates and these anti-Jewish Judeophobes, haters of the Jewish people, they make all these claims, and it could be that the question concerning Ivanka is connected with this line of thinking that how can that Ivanka, being originally non-Jewish, became Jewish, and now she is claiming to have an ancestral right to the land of Israel. And that is about and her claim is about as strong as that of all the Jewish people. In other words, not very strong at all. And this is not so. This is not the case. This is not the case whatsoever. First of all, the land belongs to God. The land of Israel belongs to the Almighty, like all the lands of the earth. And God Almighty gave the land of Israel to the Israelite nation. And the Jewish people is that portion of the Israelite nation that is still identifiable as Israelite because they keep the commandments. It's all connected with keeping the commandments. And it says in Exodus 12, verse 49, one law shall be for the native born and for the stranger who dwells among you. And whosoever dwells amongst you and becomes part of you, he will have the same law as you, the same rights and the same privileges. This is what the Torah tells us. And we also find this amongst other nations. A foreigner becomes a citizen of the USA. He receives upon himself all the rights and the obligations and the duties and the privileges of a US citizen, the same as someone born in the land, and American heritage becomes his heritage. We find this all over the world in almost every nation. And so too, even amongst the Palestinians, we have a similar concept. The Palestinians, the so-called Palestinians, are Muslims, speakers of the Arabic language, who were living in the land of Israel when the Jews returned, and and they tried to destroy the Jews, and they tried to interfere with the Jewish return and to prevent it and to harm the Jewish people and to exterminate them. And they lost the war, and some of them were expelled, and some of them were encouraged to leave. Whatever the case. And many of them are still here and should be encouraged to leave, as we shall see. Whatever the case, this is what we have. And their case is being used by anti-Semites, Judeophobes, enemies of the Jewish people, enemies of Israel, enemies of the Bible, all over the world, as a cloak to hide nefarious and evil intentions against the Jewish people, against the people of God, against the Bible. And we have a case known to me that on August the 9th, 2001, and there's a Barrio restaurant in Jerusalem, 15 people were killed, total casualties 145, a bombing took place. One of the victims was the daughter of a friend of mine, a close friend of mine. Others belonged to a family with whom one of my sons was acquainted. And at all events, they were Jewish people and they were innocents, and they were killed by two terrorists. One of the terrorists is Ahlam Tamimi, who's now living in Jordan. She's still alive. She's quite a celebrity. She's protected by the Jordanian rulers. And the other one is called Izzedin Al-Demi Shuhail Al-Masri. Al-Masri, the family name Al-Masri means in Arabic the Egyptian. In other words, he came from Egypt, not his father came from Egypt. His His grandfather came from Egypt. The whole family, whole clan came from Egypt. Because in the 1870s, 1880s, and after that, even more, when the Turks were here, and the land began to develop, and after that, when the British took over in 1917, and the British mandate, from 1920 onwards, the Jews and the British began to develop the land, and Arabs came in from all over the Muslim world. They even came from as far as West Bosnia, from North Africa. They came in from Syria, from Egypt. They came in from all over the place, and it could be, as John Peters has claimed in a book from time immemorial, that a good portion, perhaps the majority of the so-called Palestinian peoples are from such sources. And they are newcomers in the same way as they claim that the Jews are newcomers. In other words, the kettle is calling the pot black. And even if that such was not the case, it would not matter, because the Jews have a claim to the land from the strength of the Bible, from the God of the Bible promised the land to whosoever should be identifiable as keepers of his covenant, and that is the Jewish people. Jews have the right to the land of Israel because they are the Israelite nation who are identifiable, and they keep the Torah and they keep the commandments, and we have an obligation to keep the commandments. Ivanka Trump may or may not be physically descended from the 10 tribes or from Jews, or she may not. Whatever the case, she has taken the step of formal obligation. She has converted to Judaism. She has taken upon herself the duty to identify with Israel and keep the commandments. She has become an integral component of what the Jewish people is. And like every Jew, she should also abide by the Torah law, and she's taken upon herself the obligation to do so. In other words, she is liable to be punished, God forbid, if she does not do so, and she is also entitled to reward and privileges for doing so. And so the 10 tribes on their hand are not identifiable as, in the full sense, they're not identifiable in the full sense as Israelites, and therefore they are not at present obligated to keep the law of the Bible, but in the future they will do so, and this should be a phase in their coming back and their return should involve keeping the commandments when the matter becomes a bit more clearer than it is at present. The right to live in Israel is a combination of ancestry, belonging to the community of keeping the commandments. When an outsider is accepted, his acceptance is not conditional, it is absolute. He becomes a full-fledged member in every sense of the word, and he will inherit a portion of the land. In Ezekiel 47, verse 21 to verse 25, it says, "Thus you shall divide the land among yourselves according to the tribes of Israel. Shall divide it by lot as an inheritance for yourself and for the strangers that dwell among you and who bear children among you. They shall be to you as native born among the children of Israel. They shall have an inheritance with you among the tribes of Israel. And there shall be that in whatever tribe the stranger dwells, there you shall give him his inheritance, says the Lord God." Dwelling in the land of Israel involves keeping the commandments. Nachmanides, the great commentator of the Bible, wrote about this. The Bible itself says so. In Leviticus 18, verse 25, it says, "The land shall become unclean if you do not keep the commandments. And his iniquity shall be punished, and the land shall will vomit out its inhabitants." Also in Leviticus 20 to 22, verse 22, it says, "You shall keep all my statutes and all my rules to do them. The land where I am bringing you to live may not vomit you out." In Leviticus 20:24, it says, "But I have said to you, you shall inherit the land, I will give it to you to possess, a land flowing with milk and honey. I am the Lord your God who has separated you from the peoples." And therefore we have to keep the law, and we have to do the commandments. So it may be that it may be protested, as some Arabs do. Some Arabs, I've heard Arabs themselves say, and I also heard reports of Arabs saying that the Jews claim to possession of the land due to the Bible, but they themselves do not keep the Bible. They do not keep the commandments. Therefore, how can they make such claims? So it may be there's something to this, but nevertheless, it may be that the Jews do keep the commandments in the eyes of the Almighty. They keep the laws of circumcision. They keep, many of them keep the laws of purity. Many of them learn. Many of them are religious to some degree or other. And God Almighty takes account of the circumstances that we have now. A lot of pressures, a lot of international pressures, a lot of pressures from the media, a lot of pressures from the surroundings, from the world we are changing in. Historical pressures, persecutions, of Holocaust, of all kinds of problems that helped or caused the Jews to depart distance themselves from the religion, and some of them are coming back. The land of Israel helps them to come back, and things may well change. And also we have a principle that, according to certain verses in the Bible, the Israelites, when they return, will not all of them keep the law, but gradually they will come to do so. So this also is a possibility that should be considered. Consider Ezekiel chapter 11, verse 17. Therefore thus says the Lord God, I will gather you from the people and assemble you at all the countries where you've been scattered, and I'll give the land of Israel. They shall come hither, and they shall take away all the detestable things thereof, and all the abominations thereof from hence. They give them one heart, and I'll put a new spirit within you, and I'll take the stony heart out of your flesh. Will give them a heart of flesh, that I may walk in my statutes and keep mine inheritance ordinances and do them. And they shall be my people, and I will be their God. Lord God of Israel, bless you, thank you. May we all merit to know who those 10 tribes are, to spread knowledge of this truth, and to come home to where we should be. Tribes, however, will in the future have to keep the commandments. They'll have to return to the Lord. Commandments do not a person have to come to the land of Israel, but in the future they will do so. And also most of the lands they now live in will become part of the land of Israel. The right to live in Israel is a combination of ancestry, belonging to the community, and keeping the commandments. When an ancestor is accepted as part of the people, the acceptance is not conditional. Everything that accrues to the community also belongs to the single member. Living in the land should be accompanied by keeping the commandments. The land of Israel from the Nile to the Euphrates and beyond belongs to the people of Israel. It belongs to the tribes of Israel. And this includes the stranger who dwells with Israel and identifies with them. See Ezekiel chapter 47, verse 21 to 23. Thus you shall divide this land among yourselves according to the tribes of Israel. Shall be that you will divide it by lot as an inheritance for yourselves and for the strangers who dwell amongst you, and who bear children among you. They shall be to you as native born among the children of Israel. They shall have an inheritance with you among the tribes of Israel. And we shall be that in whatever tribe the stranger dwells, there you shall give him his inheritance, says the Lord God. Historically, 10 of the 12 tribes were lost. The Israelite tribes divided into 2 different sections. The northern section became the independent kingdom. It was conquered by the Assyrians, and all of its inhabitants were taken away, and the people lost consciousness, awareness of who they were, of their ancestry. Nevertheless, physically they remained as separate entities, and they exist in history. We have traced them through biblical and rabbinical and historical sources. We have traced them to Western peoples, and that is where they now are. They are amongst Western peoples, and that's what as the purpose of our existence, of our teachings, and that is what we promote, and it should be known. Nevertheless, concerning living in the land of Israel, they cannot be considered Israelites in the full sense of the term, because they are unable to identify themselves to a degree that would obligate them to keep the commandments. In the future, this will change. They'll have to keep the law of Moses, that is the equivalent of the Jewish religion. For better or for worse, this is a fact that should be faced up to. In Leviticus 20 it says, beginning from verse 22, shall therefore keep all my statutes and all my rules and do them, that the land where I'm bringing you to live may not vomit you out. And then verse 24 it says, but I have said to you, you shall inherit their land, and will give it to you to possess, a land flowing with milk and honey. I am the Lord your God, who has separated you from the peoples. And Maimonides, a great commentator who lived in the 1100s to 1270, he said, God separated us from all other peoples, and he separated us by giving us this land, and he did so without being an intermediary between us and him. Directly, God rules over the Israelite nations, over the Jewish people. The land of Israel is the inheritance of Almighty God, and it will bomb out those who pollute it. In other words, even the Israelites who live in the land of Israel have to keep the Torah. Ezekiel chapter 11 indicates that when the Israelites return, we don't know how these things will be until they actually occur, but a good portion of the Israelites, when they return, at first will not be keeping the law. They will not be acquainted with the truth. They will not know what to do, but gradually God will reveal it to them. In Ezekiel chapter 11 it says, beginning from verse 17, therefore thus says the Lord God, I will live and gather you from the people and assemble you from out of all the countries where you have been scattered, and I will give you the land of Israel. They shall come hither, and they shall take away all the detestable things thereof, and all the abominations thereof from thence. And I'll give them one heart, and will put a new spirit within you. And I'll make the stony heart out of their flesh, and will give them a heart of flesh. And I'll take the stony heart out of their flesh, and I will give them a heart of flesh, that they may walk in my statutes, and keep mine ordinances, and do them, and they shall be my people, and I will be their God. So this is it. We don't know how these things will be, where we know that they will come to pass. And these are principles that we should learn and internalize. The first step in doing this should be ascertain who the lost 10 tribes are and where they are to be found. And that is what we are doing this with our movement, Brit-Am, Hebrew Nations endeavors to do. And that is what our teaching is all about.